Hey, welcome to the last lecture on the token standard. In this lecture, we'll focus a little more on the permissions as opposed to the approval interface. So permissions are only executable by the manager, but they can be used to set and gate the rules for updating the collection, managing the collection, adding more badges, updating approvals, and so on. So you can see a full list here. Um, you can also there are also user level permissions as well, but typically these are always enabled by default and probably shouldn't be customized except for in super advanced use cases. But so we'll focus on the collection permissions for now. These can all be managed and created through the just the badge form. So as you see here, you can either set them to have complete control or customize them individually via this steps. So you can set them to be allowed, disallowed, or frozen on either end. With permissions, there's really three kind of states you can think of it as. So first is permanently allowed, which is like, as you see here, it's always allowed and frozen, so it can never be unallowed or disallowed. Second is like neutral. By default, when it's neutral, it's allowed by default, but you might be able to update it in the future to disallowed. And then lastly is being disallowed. So if once a permission becomes disallowed, it can never go back. So if you want to have it kind of, so like there's no neutral disallowed state because that's just, if you can change it, it's just allowed by neutral. So there's really three states, and as you see here, it kind of explains a little bit more. So there's forbidden and permanently forbidden, permitted and updatable, and permitted and permanently frozen. So with permissions, you can also, if I go here, everything is possible to be frozen on a fine-grained level. So as you see here, it might freeze everything like badges 1 to 10, but not 11 to max, or for like transferability, wherever it is. Oh, we're on, hold on. Let's go back to on-chain, and you can see you can gate permissions like by freeze everything from the mint address, freeze everything but the mint address, and even, as I showed before, freeze specific badges, specific times, specific ownership times, pretty much customizable on any level, fine-grained. So how do we do this? We do it with a first match policy. So for example, let's say like, we have maybe a balance type permission with badge IDs and ownership times. We set whether it's permanently forbidden, permanently permitted, and pretty much at any single time, we will always map to one of the states that we have up here. So it will either be forbidden, permanently, allowed but updatable, or allowed and permanently allowed. And let's do a simple version. So like, for example, if we have like the can delete collection here, this is permanently forbidden at all times. So if this array was empty, it would be kind of neutral because it's now not permanently permitted, nor permanently forbidden. Next thing we have is like timed updates. So a lot of we didn't actually go into it, but a lot of the interfaces for the core collection is actually timeline based. So you can set certain values to have specific values at certain times. And so, with this interface, you can, restrict, for example, we freeze the values from this time, updating the values from this time at all times. And similarly, like in the can update valid badge IDs, this is like kind of, can you expand the collection and add more? In this case, we would freeze all badge IDs for all times, but you might, only lock up to a certain badge ID. You can allow certain badge IDs. It's completely customizable because it's an array and you can add as many of these criteria checks as needed. And again, I want to go back to that first match policy. If you have a bunch of stuff in the array, we take the first match for a specific set of criteria. So like if you have another thing with like badge ID 1 in this case, down here, and subsequent elements in the array, you would not be able to, these would not map to the current criteria because the first match would be this. And then for approvals, it is a pretty advanced interface because you can customize it on all different levels as we showed here. And behind the scenes, this just maps to the core 6 fields that we talked about before. So you can customize which ones are forbidden, which ones can be updated, which ones cannot be updated, and like kind of which approval IDs, when they're updated, when they're not. So similar to the approval interface, all these criteria have to match for it to be a match. So for example, in this case, badge ID 1 would not match because it's not part of this approval, or this permission, even if all other criteria matches. So that is kind of how we implement the permissions on a fine-grained level, and yeah, so once you actually get, a lot of it will be, when you implement stuff, a lot of it will just be like you permanently forbid it for all times or permanently forbid all values, but we did it in a customizable way that you can, fine-grain and update stuff on a fine level as needed. If you want in the interface to actually do this on a more fine-grained level, just click the advanced feature on the form, and then you can customize everything as needed. So maybe you just do like badge IDs 1 to 2 and you want to disallow it, right? It would just freeze 1 to 2, and then all other badges would be allowed. So as you see here, it is because 1 to 2 matches here for the first match, these would be disallowed, but then everything else matches to this one, so 3 to max would be allowed. But it's not frozen, so it can be updated in the future.